Having two lopsided, circly things is perfectly normal, even for a roller coaster. I'm gonna rank every coaster and give them a review. Every drop and every hill, every launch and every loop. Rate it 1 to 10 and then we'll do it all again. Gonna rank and review every coaster. Desert Storm is a double looping roller coaster located at Castles and Coasters in Phoenix, Arizona. This ride is manufactured by Hopkins, a company that has only made a handful of other roller coasters. Just 4 of their coasters are currently operating, 2 of which reside at Castles and Coasters. While Desert Storm and other Hopkins coasters are not particularly bad, it isn't hard to see why there are not many around, because they are just wonky. And again, that isn't a bad thing. I enjoy the odd profiling of Desert Storm's loops in particular, but it's just not what you expect from a seemingly traditional looping coaster. And to touch more on Desert Storm specifically, let's take a quick look at it off-ride. As you may be able to deduce from the park's name, Castles and Coasters offers rides, as well as a variety of other traditional family fun center attractions. These include mini golf, go-karts, and a full arcade. So this gives Desert Storm a unique setting, as it spends its entire ride time flying over the go-kart track, mini golf courses, as well as the park's compact walkways. And it actually gets so close to the walkways at some points that it feels like you can reach up and touch the track. This gives you some really cool, unique views. You don't really get this close to most coasters' ride tracks, so I really like this. As far as the appearance of this coaster goes, well, it certainly matches the ride experience because it is also very wonky. The supports on the lift hill are pretty wild with multiple different styles and even colors. The colors of the ride in general are atypical with white track and green supports. And of course, the wonkiest part of the ride is its feature elements, the 2 vertical loops that are unlike any others you will see. Why is that? Well, that's because they twist and turn slightly throughout their course. Desert Storm also features some interesting artwork on its trains and the entrance that kind of look like those custom spray design graffiti-ish t-shirts that you see at malls and theme parks too. So it definitely looks a tad dated or retro depending on your perspective, which does make sense as this coaster opened up in the early 90s. Overall, I do think the obscurity of Desert Storm makes it fun to look at, and its location atop of what feels like everything else in the park is also a very quirky and enjoyable experience. When it comes to operations, I do believe this coaster only ever operates with 1 train. On my lone visit to Castles and Coasters in late August of 2020, this wasn't an issue at all, as the park was nearly empty, though I could see things moving slower on a busy day. Desert Storm is also unconventional when it comes to the loading station, as there are no air gates between the train and guests waiting to ride. In today's day and age, I think it is absolutely wild to have no physical barrier between soon-to-be riders and the train itself, but there have not been any accidents with this ride that I am aware of, so I guess that's really all that matters. But enough blabbering, let's get to the on-ride experience. Once you get onto one of the 12 rows, you may notice that there is nothing to hold onto. That is because only the front row of each car has a handlebar, so if you sit in an even number row, you won't have much to grab onto. Just another Desert Storm quirk. The restraints are thankfully quite minimal, consisting solely of a comfortable padded lap bar that leaves your upper body unrestricted. And most importantly, the lack of over-the-shoulder restraints makes it nearly impossible to hit your head. There are, however, headrests to the seats, but thankfully the ride is pretty smooth, so those should not cause any issues. Once your restraints have been checked, you'll be sent directly into the slow-moving lift hill, and then the first drop. This is a turning drop with odd banking that doesn't seem to properly flow with the direction changes of the track. This isn't a bad thing, as the weird banking, and lack thereof, results in some laterals tossing you side to side. These lateral forces are stronger towards the back of the train, and through the whole ride the back of the train is more forceful than the front. The bottom of the drop provides strong positive G-force forces that push you into your seat, and that is carried all the way through the first vertical loop. This loop is definitely the less obscure of the two, but it certainly still is odd. This loop shimmies a tad side to side at the apex, which results in some funky laterals while you are upside down. And not to sound like a broken record, but this loop being odd does not mean that it is bad. It's pretty fun to experience being tossed side to side while upside down. It is just not what you expect out of a vertical loop. The positive g-forces then quickly wear off as you rise into a slow left-hand turn that gradually increases in speed as you approach the second loop. And this loop might be the absolute weirdest loop I have ever experienced. Traveling up into the inversion, everything feels normal, like any other vertical loop. It is pretty tight, so you do get some strong positive g-forces. But once you hit the top of the loop, you suddenly start turning to the right. The banking is again quite off, so you'll start experiencing some strong lateral forces as your body is pinned to the left side of the train, all while still being pushed into your seat from the positive g-forces. I really like that these two loops are different, and I also like that they are not directly back to back. I feel like most double looping coasters do have their vertical loops one after the other, so I think it's kind of fun to have a slight bit of spacing between these two. The positive g-forces and speed of the ride slowly start letting up as you rise into a helix that ends up going through the second loop and passing really close by the park's log flume. The excitement of the ride is just about over at this point, but there is one more helix to pad the ride time a little bit. This helix has a small amount of positive g-forces at the beginning, but once it starts increasing in elevation, the ride completely fizzles out. And then, a few sets of brakes later, your ride is done. So, what would I rate this coaster? I'd give it a solid 6 out of 10. While it does offer a decent ride time of 39 seconds from the drop to the brakes, it's not exciting enough the whole way through. Its forceful highlights in the drop and loops are quite good, but the rest of the ride just doesn't do much for me. I do definitely appreciate the smoothness and lack of over-the-shoulder restraints, because that makes this coaster nice and comfortable and re-rideable. All in all, I think this coaster is good for what it is, and it's much better than what most family fun centers have to offer. As far as where Desert Storm ranks, amongst the 273 coasters I have been on so far, it sits right in the middle of the pack at number 134. But go ahead and let me know if you have ever experienced Desert Storm in the comments down below, or maybe you've just experienced a storm in the desert. Make sure to like the video, subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this, and make sure to tune in next time where I'll be talking about